Oh, there he is. See, this dude is so generous with his time. He was partying Xfinity Live with, I
Yeah.
think Alvarado held him over the balcony like Simba
Yeah.
the other night. What's up, Tom?
I got you, John. You
What's
got
going
me?
on? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I was partying all right. The good thing I don't sleep much. It's funny because look, I got some Band-Aids on my head. So I last night we were talking about this thing that was on my cheek. John Kruk saw it on my face last night. And he goes, "You should go get that checked." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe I will." So in between innings, I checked and saw my dermatologist had an opening this morning at 7:30. And well, guess what? It's a good thing I got it checked.
Hold on a second. You went to the dermatologist at 7:30, and then you
Yeah.
came back to do this. Thank you so much. You didn't have to do that.
Rob, hey, they're pretty quick.
Are you okay? Is there a diagnosis? I see the Band-Aid on your right cheek.
I don't know. They did a biopsy. It's like a squamous cell. It's all good though, man. With this head, there's so much stuff going on there.
Well, you're shut. You look like you put Mr. Clean on the head this morning. It looks good, Tom.
I do. Thank you for saying that, Mr. Clean. I'd rather be Mr. Clean than Egghead.
So last night's being termed the Hangover game.
I hope so.
They partied. So listen, Rob Thompson told them to go out and party tonight. Nobody knows if they were really drinking heavily or they just went out a little bit later than normal. But when you come out and you look at the game and they were losing 10-2, I'll say it was more that Kobe Allard came in and pitched, and their first three starters that came in, including Taijuan Walker, gave up 10 runs in the first couple innings. So was it combined with that maybe they were out a little bit later the previous night? I mean, I don't know. It's easy to say that, but
I'll be honest with you.
Game.
I don't think staying out, and they weren't out that late, but I don't think staying out had anything to do with it. I just think it was just poor pitching. Honestly, I mean, you get a 1-0 lead and you can't hold it right away, obviously, and then you just implode after that. The number 5 spot has been good at times this year with Turnbull and Tyler Phillips when he first came up, and it's not been good. They have an ERA of almost 7, the number 5 spot in the rotation. So last night's the last night it's going to have to be utilized, and I think it will obviously be addressed in the offseason.
Right.
But I don't think it had anything to do with being celebrating the night before. Maybe the thought process of we won the National League East.
Right.
But they really do want, obviously, one of the top 2 seeds, and they would love to have the top seed. So, I think it was just bad pitching last night.
Yeah. And the sense of urgency drops down a little bit based on you clinching, and it probably get revs back up now that you're like, all right, we need to win these games. Tom, you're especially in baseball, you do 162 of them, and you don't do the full 162 because you're very busy with the NFL, but you're doing damn near all of them. And so you're traveling with the team. You're with the team constantly. You see Rob. You see the coaches every day. This team right here, they seem very close. The other teams as well. What's this team like? What's the identity? What is kind of the personality of this team compared to the previous 2 of this run right here?
Well, it's very similar to the previous 2, but I do think they've gotten closer over the last year or so. And I think losing to the Diamondbacks has sort of fueled that because it's sort of a collective disappointment from last year, losing Game 7. And quite frankly, Johnny, they should never have come back from Arizona without the trophy last year. I mean, they shouldn't have. And they know that. But I think that they've grown together with another year. They are extremely close. It's very similar to the 08 team after losing in 07, kind of getting shell-shocked in 07 to the Rockies. Very similar to the 08 team. Very similar to the 09 team as well. So I like that they've grown together. They've added some pieces that really do fit the puzzle in this clubhouse. And, I'm excited to see what they do. I know that their offense has still been up and down at times, but I'm excited to see what they do in the postseason just because they have this drive to be better than they were last year.
Yeah, this year, the bullpen seems like a real strength as opposed to last year. Once you got in the playoffs, once Alvarado kind of lost it, they were in big trouble. Before we get to that, let me ask you, I think the one burning question the Phillies fans have is what is Rob Thompson going to do with the starting rotation? How do they line it up? Is it Aaron Nola's the number 2? Chris Sanchez pitches that much better at home. Any insight or what would you do if you were lining up this playoff rotation?
Well, we talked to him yesterday a little bit about it when we had our meeting as broadcasters, and he hasn't decided yet. And I think a lot of it has to do with who the matchup is. whether they're going to face the Padres or the Diamondbacks or, the Braves, the Mets, whoever it's going to be. So I think that'll dictate a lot of it. I do think he's chewing over the fact that he wants Sanchez, that Sanchez will pitch game 2. 2 reasons: split up the 2 right-handers, but also give him the home game. The other part of it, though, is that Nola's pitched really well at home over the years. So, he's weighing that as well. So I don't think there's anything set. And he's usually pretty forthright with us when it comes to the planning part of it.
Yeah.
He wants to take care of the top 2 seeds first, and then because he, at that point, he'll know he's off next week. Then he can sort of decide what he wants to do, depending on the matchup, who's going to pitch game 2. Definitive Wheeler game 1. I would say that he's probably leaning toward Nola game 2, only because of being the steadiest of guys reputation-wise. Or past years-wise, but I don't think he's adverse to thinking the way everybody else is that Christopher should be game 2 starting.
Man, he's been so good. We had Scott Fransky on with us last week, I think, and he had said one of the things you don't have to consider with Nola is he very much is hey, Aaron, we're going to make you the 3rd starter.
It's exactly right.
And he'll be like, oh, okay. Sounds good. You're not going to worry about pissing him off or upsetting chemistry in the clubhouse.
Nope, not even a little bit. He's the guy that you want to hang out with and watch TV with, go to the movies with. Just say, hey man, you want to go to a Burger King or McDonald's? I don't care. Like that's who he is, man. It's who he is, and that's why I don't think it's going to be a topic of worry. I think if it happens, it's going to be because of matchups and because of comfort level for Christopher. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be fazed at all about it.
Bounce back to the bullpen for a second, man. I mean, and Estevez hasn't been. I mean, he's been really good, but what it does is it makes the rest of your bullpen that much better.
Doubt.
Jeff Hoffman in the 8th inning. Holy cow, man. I mean, he is one of the best 8th inning guys in baseball. Now, Kerkering doesn't have to be used in the 8th inning as much. Alvarado's kind of a wild card. Strom and Alvarado had gotten good again for that stretch right there. This bullpen, if a starter can give you 6 innings, which is so difficult in the playoffs, I know that. I feel much better about this team closing games out than I did in that Diamondback series.
Well, I would agree, and I think you're right. I think Kerkering can go in the 7th inning, and he could be dominant in the 7th inning. And this is a starting staff that they're not going to. I know they changed a couple years ago when they took like Wheeler out in that game against the Astros, which could have led to the Phillies having an additional run against the Astros. I think Rob's going to take the same approach with at least the top 3 guys that he took during the regular season. Now, if he sees something, he may pull them out early, but I think he's going to leave them in there, for as long as they possibly can, because they've shown this year how good they are. I mean, the starters have the most wins in baseball. They've gone the deepest of any other team on a consistent basis, averaging over 6 innings per outing. So, but I think it's true. I mean, you got Kerkering in the 7th. You can throw Strom in the 7th or 8th. You got Alvarado that you can go, if you want to, in the 7th to get a lefty out. Or to get anybody out at this point, because I think his stuff is better. And then I don't think he has it set for the 9th inning. I do think he likes the Hoffman, Estevez, sort of back and forth. But I do think there'll be times where you'll still see Hoffman close it out if the matchup calls for it for some reason.
Another great Dave Dombrowski find where he was on waivers. Anybody could have had him. But, man, Hoffman has been an all-star level where he's been an all-star since they got him.
He has resurrected his career. Actually, he's given himself a career. That's the thing. He's given himself a career because he's going to get 3 years and whatever money next year.
$45 million.
It's just inevitable, and I hope it's with the Phillies. But he's played himself into a very nice contract. And honestly, John, he's a hard worker. He's a great dude. He is also somebody that, that deserves this because he's worked hard to get to this point.
Yeah, agreed. It's a great story. Tyler Zulli, my producer and also of PHLY Phillies, asked a great question. It's back to starting pitching. So will he set the rotation at the beginning of the series, or could it possibly be, hey, what happens in game 1? Does that change things? Which I don't think with Thompson. That's
I think it's going to be he'll set it before the series, and I just think that there's a sense of normalcy that Rob would like And I think he feels like if he has it set, then there's no doubt in anybody's head. Like, let's say if the Phillies lose game 1, and if he shows any kind of panic, which he never does, that sometimes seeps into the clubhouse. Right. I believe if you're a manager that shows that, or shows body language or anything like that, I think he'll set it before everything gets underway. Now, could he change it if they advance to the championship series? Absolutely. Sure. But I think for this series, he'll set it before we go.
Set it and forget it, like Ron Popeil and the.
That's exactly right.
And the Popeil, whatever that cooker thing was. All right, so T-Mac, by the way, we appreciate it because we know you're a big star these days. CBS football, play-by-play, very, very busy. Now, Tom, I go way back to you. I've never talked to you about this. I was a big fan of talking baseball. I'm obviously I'm a huge fan of radio, and so from I think it was 2001 to 2005, you did the pre and post.
Yep.
And you also did some play-by-play, and you did talking baseball. So you were doing a pregame that was really kind of like Let's Talk Baseball, and you took phone calls on it. I always enjoyed that show. You go to the Mets for a couple of years, you come back, and that's when you have more, that's when you're really full-time play-by-play T-Mac. But you're also the former voice of the Princeton Bears football and basketball. And your most famous call with Princeton, I believe, was the 96 NCAA tournament where 15 beats 2. So UCLA won the national championship in, I guess it would have been 1995.
Correct.
Who was on that team? The O'Bannon brothers were on that team, right?
Yep. And what the heck is the little point guard's name?
Yeah, I'm blanking on his name.
Now. But that was my first NCAA tournament game, was Princeton against UCLA, and I still have the tape. It's on a cassette tape, and I have to EQ the cassette recorder, and I got to make sure my cassette recorder still works all the time, because I haven't moved over to digital, which I should. But I have to EQ it, because if I don't, then it sounds like this when I do it.
Right.
That was the first game I had ever done, and I'm like, man, this is unbelievable. If this is what it's going to be like moving forward.
15 beats 2. So Princeton beats, and it was a high-scoring game, 43-41, if I remember correctly.
And man, that was typical Princeton under Pete Carrill. It was Carrill's last year also.
Oh, it was.
So that was a hoot, being with him the whole year and doing the interview with him before every game.
Wow.
And, we were out in Fresno State. We were taking on the Shark when he was the head coach of Fresno State. And I remember walking with Pete to the luncheon for this tournament that we had with Fresno State. He had a cigar in his mouth. He never lit it anymore. And there was a railing going up the stairs to the luncheon. He takes the cigar out and he puts it in the railing, like right into the railing itself. And then we come out 2 hours later and he grabs it out of the railing and puts it back in his mouth as we're walking away. I mean, it was unbelievable, the whole experience of doing games with him.
I actually had it down. What was it like working with him? I didn't realize it was the last season. His last season.
Year.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, he went on to be. He was with Sacramento for many years after that.
Yeah, Bill Carmody took over after that, and then John Thompson, and that's when I left to go to St. Joe's for that year. They went to the Elite Eight.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, how would you rate your call on that? Because you're obviously still early in the business. How was your final call?
Well. That's Reese's Peanut Butter Cup McCarthy right there. That's barking at something.
That's all right.
So I rate that call as not knowing a damn thing of what I was doing, to be quite honest with you. So I liked it. I liked everything about it. And then I listened back to it and I said, and the upstart Princeton tie. I'm like, upstart? I've never used upstart. I've never used it before, and I've never used it again. I have no idea where that came from. But other than that, I loved it because I don't want to say I was scared or anything like that, because I wasn't, but I was like, holy crap. I mean, this is unbelievable. And I had to make sure that, I got in that the defending national champions were out. And back then, John, they never really, there was no social media. So the only way for me to listen back to it was through the cassette. And then ESPN ran it that night. Like we're in like one of the rooms that they have set up for everybody, the media rooms.
Right.
And they have ESPN on, and they didn't have like top 10. I guess they had top 10 plays. Anyway, they ran my call, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, how did they get that? I thought it was good. The only thing, I talked with such a nasal back then. Like I talked through my nose. Like I sounded like Sylvester Stallone and Rocky sometimes. That But
I
the
gotta get it.
upstart,
I gotta get the call.
upstart
Honestly,
part,
like I'm at 4:00 in the morning. I'm looking up some stuff and I'm Googling trying to get the radio call, which is Gus Johnson did the TV call.
He did, yeah. Gus did the TV
which
call.
I heard. But if I would have had another day, if I would have thought of this yesterday, I would have emailed Princeton and said, "Hey, any way you can get me this? I would love to hear it."
Jerry Price has it from Princeton. I have it. Like I said, I'd have to.
It's on cassette.
I would have to put it. I'd have to put my phone over it, and that's how you would get it. That's pretty much the only way. I probably have it somewhere on my computer because I know I probably sent it to somebody when they were doing some kind of a retrospect of that. But
it's out there. I just couldn't find it.
Listen, I knew it. I knew it was never a play that they had run, right? I knew that. So you're always ready for the back door with them. And I felt good that I sort of described everything the right way, and I gave the score and all that other stuff. But I'm telling you, when I said the upstart Princeton Tigers, I listened to it even today. I'm like, what the hell is upstart?
All right, so here's my question. Do you write stuff down? Because you just called the Phillies won the NL East. I actually went back and I listened to Harry's call when they won in '93. They clinched the division. It was Don Paul. Like, Don Paul, the Phillies win, right? Do you know that you're going in the moment that they're going to clinch at some point? So do you just have things in your head you're going to say, or how do you go about doing it?
I just have things in my head. I don't like to script anything at all. The only thing that I wanted to make sure that I got in, and it's funny, my kids had a bet, they said, before I did it, what I would say. The only thing I knew I wanted to say, it was 13 years, and it was their 12th National League East crown.
Right.
Because back in '81, they had the split season, and the Expos and the Phillies both won a half of that season. But the Expos won in that postseason, so it didn't technically count as a National League East crown, which some spots say it is, some spots say it isn't, but it's not technically. So I wanted to make sure I had those two things. But I never write anything down. If I do anything, there may be a bullet point or two about a reflection on something in my book. But I always feel that I can always tell when somebody writes down a big call.
Yes.
And I don't want that to be it.
It sounds like it.
If to me, it comes out.
It sounds like it.
Whatever way it comes out. And it's live TV or live radio. I just want to make sure that it's factually correct, and you sort of collect the moment, of what's happening. So no, I never write anything out.
Man, well, listen, we are lucky in Philadelphia to have not only the TV broadcast, the radio broadcast. You guys are the best. Whether you're in the car or you're watching on TV, nobody has it like this in the country for us. All right, last thing. NFL, so far you did the Arizona-Buffalo game, which was a hell of a game. Buffalo came back big in the second half. And then you had the Chargers in Carolina. You might have done play-by-play for Bryce Young's last start in the NFL, Tom McCarthy. I don't know if he's getting back.
Well, it's funny. I think he's going to get traded at some point. Yeah. He needs to go somewhere like with Tua when he found a head coach that used his skills. And I'm not saying that Bryce Young's Tua at all because he's much smaller. He needs to find a system that fits what he did at Alabama in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think it's in Carolina right now.
Yeah. Thank the diehards out there, all the great listeners and everybody out there. Thank the diehards. I agree with you, Tom. It's not going to happen in Carolina, not with that owner. And he was drafted number 1 overall for a reason. He's not Jamarcus Russell, but they need somebody that can actually get that out of him. He might be too small. He might be too small and not big enough of an arm or elusive enough. He looks a lot different playing in the NFL than he did in college. That's for sure.
He does. He's such a great kid. He's smart. I do think he can figure it out, but I don't think it's as a starter right now. I just think he needs a little seasoning, and he needs and I'm not saying that Dave Canales is not a good coach. He could be. He just needs something. He also needs a more of a running game. Not that Chuba Hubbard hasn't run the ball well the last couple weeks, but I still think he needs somebody else in that capacity too.